Reg, we are live. Give it a couple of minutes just to make sure it beams around all the places that we're going live.
Amazing.
Doing, is it sunny in Jersey?
It is. No, it's overcast today, but it's quite warm, so that's good. So I am really looking forward to this session, as always, Mr. Power. Let's throw the boomerang out there and add a load of value for people who are on. Got to see the tickers going in terms of people joining, so that's great. Just as people come in, the focus for today is about the growth dilemma, the quandary that so many people are facing. Perry and I have spent since 2017 cracking this chestnut around employed versus self-employed versus blended model. So that's what today's about. And we'll also talk about a one-day masterclass that we're going to be doing on the 22nd of May. So, yeah, really excited. I'm looking forward to this one, Perry.
So I think the point of so am I, because I've been there and felt it. And the point of this whole session, right, is that we get a lot of people asking us about the self-employed model because we started it in 2016, was our first employed agent. And lots of other brands have come to the UK and started growing with a self-employed model. And actually what we've learned, having lost a lot of money in the process, I was looking today actually, and in the terrible year 2022, we lost about 40 grand in March 2022. Just this March, we've just made £38,000 profit. And I don't say that to like brag, because they won't all be like that. We know the seasonalities of our industry, yada, yada, yada. But it was our most profitable month ever. And I think the really important thing to take from that is that it's how you and I, in that 2020 post-COVID, different world, yada, 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 how we rebuilt. We took Power Bespoke back down to blocks, right? And then we put them blocks back together. We had a great brand, we had a great reputation, but the inner mechanics were all wrong. And we're going to touch on that today. And we're going to end up with, should you run a self-employed model? Should you run an employed model? Or should you run a blended model? So let's jump into it. Frame that while I shut my blind, because my son's just got in from school by the looks of it.
And for those who spend time with Perry and I, you know that we like to add phenomenal value and give you some real golden nuggets that you can take away and implement straight away. So there's a number of chapters and themes that we've worked on today in terms of, as always, doing our planning and preparation. So we come to this to bring our A game and add value for you. So the chapters that we're going to flow through, we're going to talk about what I call the who first strategy, which is a mindset shift, but it's really important as a foundational building block for what we're going to talk about today. So the who first principle is going to come first. Whether it's an employed or a self-employed model, the next thing we're going to talk about is the importance of a one team mentality. That's one team, one mission, one culture, one plan, irrelevant of whether you have employed or self-employed. I think this is where a lot of estate agencies get their model wrong, and not just estate agencies. I work with a number of other clients who run a hybrid blended model of employed and self-employed. And what you can't do it as silos. So we're going to nail that one as well. There's a whole piece around recruitment and your attraction strategy. We have a wait list at Power Bespoke. How many is on the waiting list now, Perry?
127 have joined in the last few years. Not saying everybody's going to be joining us, but it's a constant flow and we can kind of pick the ones that we might be interested in.
Yeah, so how do you get a wait list of 127 people? And as Perry said, they might not all be right, but you've got to get your attraction strategy right. And how do you set up as an employer of choice your EVP? So we're going to talk about that. Then comes the big golden nugget around reward and remuneration. And the mistake a lot of businesses are making. Yes, we made a net profit, substantial net profit in March, but most people don't understand the correlation of direct costs, gross profit, what's above the line, what's below the line, the relationship with overheads. And until you understand that, you can't then create your reward and remuneration structure. So we're going to talk about the pitfalls of that and how you can avoid trial and error, because that's where we have spent a lot of time honing and polishing the model. And then, you know, the mistake that a lot of people make is about commission and where they start to get the trigger, and what they're not doing is covering the cost of the basic salaries and so forth. So again, there's some real fundamental basics with this, and it's not just from Perry's experience of what we've done with Power Bespoke, but guys, I've been doing this for 20 years. You know, our ticker in terms of increased revenue and profit across all the clients we work with, agnostic of industry, is just gone through the £3.6 billion of increased revenue and profit that we've put on our clients. So, this is serious stuff. If you want to work with people who've been there and done it, we've done the trial and error so you don't have to do it. So they're going to be the key building blocks that we talk about, and then we'll finally close on, if we've got time, on our climatization. But I think it's also worth mentioning, whilst we're going to add loads of value for you today, if off the back of this you like what we're talking about and you want to go deep on this stuff, Perry and I are doing a day on the Thursday, the 22nd of May at the Gatwick Hilton, where we're really going to go through the details of the numbers and how this all works so that you can go away with a blueprint and successful that you can implement. But, more on that later. Let's just focus on adding some value first, Perry.
Yeah, I think it's really important, these discussions, because the self-employed brokerage model seems to just be like a massive buzzword. And I speak to a lot of established estate agency owners that want to try and, modernize their business a little bit. And it's always focused around bringing on self-employed agents. And I think it's important to understand that, one, it's not for everyone. Just because everyone else is doing it, that doesn't mean you should be doing it. I think that needs to come from a position of, should I do it, rather than I'm going to do it. And there's a lot of these models as well that just aren't making any money. And that sounds really, really callous, right? But profit isn't, it seems to be a bit of a dirty word, but trust me, it was dirty when we had lost 43,000 quid. That was dirty. That was a dark place, led to a mental breakdown. And yes, we can make £40,000 a month. And that just means that then we can invest in better marketing for our agents, whether employed or self-employed, or however you run your business. So this, I think, is a really important session. And I remember for our Scaling Up program members in Jersey last month, they were just blown away by the way you've helped me, Royston, build our management accounts, P&L. Most people don't know their quarter end until the following quarter. That's a massive problem. You said to me, you need to show me your March P&L, let's say, by the 5th of April latest. If you haven't got your finger that much on the pulse, and all the direct costs, the overhead, they were all wrong when we first met. And the guys on the Scaling Up program are like, wow, ours is completely wrong. Can you help us kind of get it right? So it's important. So let's kind of jump into that first bit.
Yeah, and also I think, Perry, you've got to understand where you are now and where you're going. You've got to understand where you've come from. And I think it's really important that people understand that we started this journey back in 2017. And, there's clear chunks, wasn't there? There was 2017 to 2020. When I first met you, you were absolutely hell-bent on the only model that you were doing was the self-employed model.
Yeah.
And we had some challenging conversations about that, didn't we?
Yeah, I had to get out my own way, and it was actually a bit of a catastrophic situation that eventually made me get out my own way, whereas I was resistant at the start. You were always saying to me, well, be careful, you need resilience in your business, you need agility, you need to weather different markets. And I was just like, no, the future self-employed estate agency. And what I learned very, very quickly is that is very much the truth for a certain portion of the market, but definitely not the whole market. And I was probably blinkered to 80%, 70% of the potential agents that could join us. The quality of agents, because we're not, there's kind of some brands out there, I think, that if you've got a beating heart, you can join the business as a self-employed agent. With us, there's very, very high levels of barriers of entry. So, and the story I tell people is a lot of people have met Steph, our head of sales, and me and her first started speaking in 2018, and we both wanted her to join, but she was like, I only want to be employed. And I think I look back at that and thought, oh, why is that? Like, come on, everyone should be self-employed. But actually, fast forward however long, she's been with us 3 years. She's absolutely bossing it. That profitable month is largely down to her as well. She's employed, but then we've also got highly profitable self-employed agents. So I think we need to start talking more about this blended model, and people should open their mind to it. It's not one or the other. It's the who first strategy. Is that right?
Yeah. And Steph absolutely plays into that who first strategy, because if you think about it, Perry, if you'd taken her on in 2018, then we'd probably have been fast-tracked the model far quicker. It wasn't until 2022 that Steph joined, and we've done what we've done. So The who first strategy is a really important strategy, not just for estate agency, but this is a principle I've adopted for years. And the great thing about the who first strategy is that we can put so much time into what business are we in, thinking about our value proposition and setting the business up for success and our operational systems and so forth. But the reality is, even for technology-driven businesses, people are a critical enabler to allow you to turn your vision, your goals, and to fulfill what it is that you're wanting to achieve. So the who first strategy is get the right people on the bus first. And if you get the right people who align culturally with the right value set, with the right motivation and drive, and you get an aligned team of individuals, you can move mountains. And I've always said in business that I know with the team that we've built in our businesses that it doesn't almost matter what business we're in. We could be in retail, we could be a hairdressing salon, we could be a taxi business. With the right people can run any business. It's the expertise that you have. And the who first principle is really important because, Steph was the right person even back in 2018. And because your mindset, Perry, was focused on we do a self-employed model only, we missed the opportunity with Steph because Steph wanted to be employed. And there's no right or wrong, whether you're employed or self-employed. That's only the contractual arrangement about how you formulate the relationship with the business. It doesn't matter whether you're employed or self-employed. It's about the right individual with the right motivation, the right drive. And I'll share a story with you about the who first principle because Jim Collins, who created Good to Great, Built to Last, some of the best forward-thinking leadership and business growth has come from Jim Collins. And he talks a little bit about the who first principle in B 2.0. And the story he shares is he went to this burger joint with his wife, and he went there and he got great service. And the guy that he was talking to was a student who was working to fund his student education in university by working in the burger joint. And a couple of times that they went back, they seemed to always get him, who was the server who looked after them. And literally what transpired was he was literally working all the hours God sended in order to literally work in a 40-hour week in this burger joint in order to fund his university education. And Jim Collins liked him so much that he said to his wife, he said, you know what, we're going to go back and we're going to employ him. And he went during his summer vacation and went and worked for Jim Collins as a graduate researcher and then ended up subsequently working for Jim Collins. And Jim Collins always talks about that is a great example of the who first principle. The guy had a great attitude. He had a great work ethic. He was intelligent. He was smart. And he ended up taking him on. So the who first principle is you should always be recruiting. You never know in life where you're going to come across individuals. Your paths are going to cross with the right people at the right time who will appear, who are right for your business and organization. So the who first principle for me is a mindset shift. And I think there's this myth that it doesn't have to be an employed or a self-employed model. I call it the genius of the and or the tyranny of the or. And the or makes you think narrow thinking and tunnel focused. Whereas the genius of the and is in your business, you can have the employed and the self-employed model in your business and working in harmony and working in unison. And I think that's where the power of the forces come from and why the who first principle is so important.
Well, I think it comes back as well to all I keep seeing around social media is like, oh my God, I'm so glad I went self-employed because I can now drop my kids to school. The issue there is like your boss was just a dick when you were employed. Your boss hadn't kind of modernized themselves, the boss, if you want to call it that, if you're an employee. But you don't need to go to those extremes in order to drop your kids to school or pick them up after school, whatever. So I think I'm massive on this because for me now, it's not about, and we all do it, right? We all do it. We want to pay this salary, this commission scheme. You put that on the job advert and then you hope people conform to what you've put out on the job advert, whatever you want to call it. But actually, how about, package negotiable, full stop? It's the right person that we need. And if an absolute superstar comes along and says, actually, I want to be self-employed because I've got motivation for doing that, high five. If I want to be employed, that's high five as well. Like I've really changed and matured, I think, from all about the person, one team, one mission, one brand. If you align with that brand and that mission, doesn't matter to me if you want to be self-employed or employed or whatever. We can make it work.
You've touched on the second key building block we wanted to talk about today, Perry, which is, so number one, make sure that from this day forth that you have this who first mindset and philosophy, that you're always out there looking for the right people, because you will find them in sometimes the most bizarre places where you'll come across people who ultimately could be right to join your team and could be great people that you work with. So that's number one. The second thing, as Perry talks about, is the one team mentality. And the one is in capitals, it's underlined and it's in bold. And it's bigger font than all the others. One team, one mission, one culture, one plan. And not just in a state agency, but in all the businesses I've worked with, I've seen where you've had employed people and self-employed, where it ends up being silos and it ends up being an us and them mentality. What's really important when you think about this is it's one team. How people are contractually engaged with the business, whether that's through an employed contract or whether that's through a self-employed contract, is almost irrelevant. That's about personal drivers and motivations and what they feel comfortable with. So, for example, you take Steph. Steph wanted the peace of mind and the certainty that came with being in an employed role. And if we weren't open to that, we would lose somebody who is an unbelievably high performer, an A player in both how they deliver and the cultural alignment and their behaviors. And yet then you've got somebody else who absolutely, they don't need the certainty of being employed. They want to be self-employed. But the reality is, in a one team, one mission, one culture, one plan business, the great thing is they work in harmony together, and you've got them buddying up together, employed and self-employed. It's almost irrelevant. And it's how you set your culture up for success, which is really important. And from day one, whether you've got employed, self-employed, or a blended, which I think is where the future is at, the blended approach, that you've got to have this unifying principle of how high performance teams win is when everybody is aligned behind a common purpose, a common goal, and they're working in harmony. The strength of the team is the individual team members. The strength of the individual is the team members. And that's irrelevant of whether they are employed or self-employed. And I just think this is where people have not got the mindset around this. And this is why when you think about what we did on the Scaling Up program with the guys in Jersey last month, once we started talking about the recipe for success about how high performance teams win, then you can absolutely set self-employed and employed people up within that framework where they support each other, where they've got each other's backs, where they are trusted, and where they're absolutely championing each other to be the best that they can be.
Well, that kind of comes back as well to the kind of the brand standards and not going into detail as to whether you're employed or self-employed, but some of the brand standards that we've got in place are things like you must attend the end of month all hands. And if you're based too far away geographically to get to it, then you're not going to be able to join us as a self-employed partner agent. You must attend the Friday agent huddle every Friday morning on video call. And that's not a drop in. Like, it's, if you're performance minded, you've got a video call of high performers sharing challenges, what's going well, where they need to improve, situations of client situations, and sitting on that call might be free employed, free self-employed, but we're all with the same mentality. And that's the important part. And the worry that I speak to agents at times and they're like, yeah, I might bring someone on self-employed to develop an area that we don't really do much business in right now. And I'm like, but that's really unfair, as in, like, leave them on the sidelines. If they do well, great. If not, no skin off my nose. I haven't lost much money from them. And that to me is like, you're already creating a silo ultimately. Whereas you've got to have that unified connection of high performance, no excuses. What are you doing today? Every Friday after our huddles, we share kind of our output actions, because everyone's not going to be sitting there waiting for the phone to ring. On Fridays, as everyone knows, if you follow me, the structured week, Friday's all about new client acquisition. So all that kind of stuff matters, whether you're employed or self-employed. It probably matters more when you're self-employed, because without that, you need to do this today, John, because you're employed by me and I need you to do it. You get a little bit complacent, a bit lazy, think, oh, I'll clock off early today and I'll go to the pub. when you maybe haven't hit your weekly goals that you set for yourself. So that accountability of that one team, one mission, I think is really important.
No, it is, and within the brand standards, there's your non-negotiables, and the whole point for me about having a tag on somebody, whether they're employed or self-employed, is irrelevant. If it's the right person aligns to the who first principle with the right values, the right will and desire to want to add value and make a difference, and we're all aligned behind a common purpose and vision and mission that we're all bought into. Back to the point that the contractual arrangement, whether you're employed or self-employed, becomes completely irrelevant. It's about the right individual with the right focus, with the right mindset, with the right skill set. And that's where the brand standards apply to everybody. It's non-negotiable across the whole board. And if you don't like them, and that's where I think you've got to be, and we talk about performance culture, it's not a culture, it's not a family culture, it's a grown-up performance culture where people want to come, where they want to work in an environment where they can challenge each other to be the best that they can be. They want to be part of the challenge with being in a self-employed model is you miss that camaraderie of the team spirit, of the team unity, of being part of one high performance team. And I think that's what we've really managed to get the recipe of right, is within that framework of one high performance team, how do you really get the employed and self-employed working in harmony where they're supporting each other, where they've got each other's backs, and where you really are driving, performance, and they're egging each other on in a positive way to really raise the bar and be the best that they can be. And that's the power of it.
Love it. And I think the next point that we're going to go on to was really important that we've learned in this whole, just to reframe, you started helping me a lot 2017 to 2020, and then the world changed in 2020, and then we've been kind of rebuilding since then, and we've come out of it stronger. We had a massive cultural shift after COVID because we went into a completely remote team, and it took probably 18 months for that culture to adjust a little bit. But now we've managed to create that remote high performance team without having to be in the office every Friday together, for example. But I think the expectations and the acclimatization period, again, there seems to be different processes if someone's got an employed model versus a self-employed model. Like, we have a very clear minimum expectation. And if you're not going to be prepared to bring in at least 100 grand a year of gross commission income and always be striving to push that up, whether that be for increasing your average fee, more volume, growing your team, if you just want to be able to sell 3 houses a year when they come your way, you're not going to be joining Power Bespoke. Doesn't mean to say you're not a great person, but there's other brands out there that you can sell your 3 houses a year with and earn a lot more money than if you were to do it with us, because we want to level people up by giving the support in the office, the client acquisition support, the centralized costs that we've got to help grow our agents. And grow is a very personal word, but as long as you've got something to grow, it might be, I want to bring on a co-agent to spend more time with my family whilst increasing my average fee. That's growth. It doesn't have to be, I want to take over the whole of the UK. So as long as you've got a growth mindset and you want to keep improving and pushing, because if you're not growing, you are going backwards because people around you are growing. That's the important thing.
Yeah, Perry, there's a really important point here. And I talk all the time about the revenue line is the vanity line, profit is sanity, and cash is reality. And I think that whole philosophy of getting a vanity metric also applies to the number of people that you employ, because it's a vanity line to be in the pub on a Friday night and say to somebody, I run an estate agency business and I employ 10 agents. And you're using that as a vanity line, but the 10 agents, they're not making any money. They're not making money for themselves, and they're not making money for the business. That is a vanity line. I'd rather have less is more and have 4 people who are the right fit. And that's why that entry criteria of saying, this is the minimum standard in terms of 100K plus a year in terms of commissions that you generate. And it comes back to the question, how serious are you? Now, your point's absolutely right. If people want to just play at it and they want to just do a couple of property sales here and there in between school holidays, or they just want to do it as a part-time, great. There's other vehicles through which they can go and do that. At Power Bespoke, we are serious about adding value and helping people to open the door to the next chapter of their life and the vision and purpose and what we do. And what we need is you need serious players in order to do that. So that is absolutely part of our criteria about how serious are you about being the best that you can be? How serious are you about your career? And we only want serious players. So please, please, please don't get hung up on, like people get hung up on, the revenue is the vanity line. Don't do that also with, oh, I employ 12 people or 30 people or whatever it might be, because that's a vanity line. And I think, again, that's one thing that we've really learned, haven't we, Perry? That actually less is more. I'd rather have a small number of people that we are really supporting well, that we are creating opportunity for, that are getting the leads, that are getting the support that they need, and are smashing it out the park. And, you know, I'd rather have 4 people in that camp than I would have 8 people where the focus is diluted across 8.
Well, it's no... I mean, we've made the most profit we've ever made in March with the least amount of agents.
Yeah.
And there's very few companies out there. And again, this is why it's really important. You have to decide, before you decide self-employed, employed, whatever, you have to decide fundamentally what and who your brand serves. And for us, it's the home mover, right? So our priority always is going to be Mr. and Mrs. Smith looking to upsize or downsize. The secondary person that we need to think about is the agent. There's a lot of people, and I'll take that view. I've been challenged on that before. And I've said, well, it's really simple. Most other brands are a platform for agents to trade on. And so their priority is the agent. So if the agent wants to do 0.75%, the agent can. You don't get away with that at Power Bespoke. That's just the lazy way to sell houses. You need to be improving the industry and the fees in the industry. So we've got a minimum fee expectation. And if you can't achieve that, you need to level yourself up or go somewhere that would allow you to charge 0.75%. But too many companies are in a bit of a identity crisis where they're like, hang on, we kind of want to attract home sellers, but we also want to attract agents to join us. And we should be doing this, but our agents aren't going to like that. So every decision that we make is for the home mover, because keep them happy, coming back, paying high fees, recommending, referring. The agents are going to be really happy anyway, because they're going to be getting clients coming through the front door. And I don't know of any other kind of, if you want to call it brokerage model, that have a full-time quality advice meeting generator who's full-time dedicated to producing advice meetings, whether it's for our employed or self-employed agents. So there's like some fundamentals that a business should have, and that getting new clients. Whereas most partner agent models or brokerages, yes, they'll pay you 70% of the fee share, but they'll generate you 0 in revenue because you're having to go and door knock and which I'm not saying you should never do, but there has to be a kind of, what are you getting for your fee share? I know that 57% when I last checked of our agents, employed or self-employed, bankings were from brand generated opportunities, because we're hot on the brand. Again, I think UK clients need a strong brand behind them where they can Google the brand, you know, Perry Power. Okay, great. He's a good agent. He works with Power Bespoke. Let's check them out. And there's 300 5-star reviews sitting there, rather than haven't heard from this brand, or it's the biggest real estate brand in the world that no one's ever heard of in the UK, because the person that matters is the brand down the road that sold the most houses in that area. So I think you need to rethink who you're serving, build your proposition around that. And if it is agents, fine. Build a platform for agents to plug into. And I've had agents that have spoken to me the past couple of years, and I've said, look, you're better off going to X, Y, and Z company. If you're only going to do that, if your aspirations are only to do that level of business and do it kind of part-time, you're better off going with them, getting a higher fee share, happy days. 12 months later, they've joined our waiting list because they would rather the lower splits, but the more, you know, 50% of 200 grand is a whole lot more than 70% of 100 grand. So you just got to bear that in mind, that the client acquisition in what is a really fierce competitive market, we all know agents down the road pulling their pants down and on fee, it's really hard to scrap with that. And your personal brand will only take you too far. You know, my personal brand probably got me to 400 grand a year in bankings. Over and above that, it's systems, it's processes, it's marketing, it's additional team members. So you need to be, as an agency owner, you kind of need to decide who you serve first and foremost, get out of the identity crisis and build your proposition around that. And don't be afraid to say that, you know, you are our secondary client in this situation, Mr. Self-Employed Agent, because we really want to focus on making the home mover experience remarkable to get you more clients. So it's a client first approach.
Guys, you want to go back and listen to what Perry's just said there, because it is so fundamental to setting your business up for success. And just playing back a couple of things. What sits above that is a fundamental question about, are you building your business outside in or inside out? And the people who are building a platform business are building it inside out. Whereas if you look at any great business that's been built, Amazon, Apple, LinkedIn, they're built outside in, and the client and the customer is absolutely the focal point. And Perry's spot on. There's so many businesses who've got an identity crisis. They don't know who they're serving. They don't know what the purpose is and what they're trying to achieve. And therefore, they're schizophrenic in terms of how they set themselves up. If you build your business outside in, you're absolutely clear that the home, what do you call it, Perry? The home mover or the home
mover. Yeah.
Home mover is absolutely why we are in business. The cause that we serve is helping home movers get the best possible experience, whether that's upscaling or whether they're downscaling, whatever it might be. And that's what cause you are serving, building your business outside in. And then you don't end up with an identity crisis. Then you're really clear about why you exist, who you exist for. And then how do we create, through our employee value proposition and our high performance team, an environment where people can really thrive, irrelevant of whether they're employed or self-employed. We just become an employer of choice, which is why Perry's got a waiting list of 127 people who are on the list going, I want to work for the business, because we have got a purpose, because we are clear about the identity and what we're trying to build, and because they want to be part of it. And it's really, what Perry's just talked about there is so fundamentally important to addressing this growth dilemma of employed versus self-employed versus the blended model. And if you're really clear about you are building outside in, you're really clear about what cause you serve and what your purpose is and your driver, then you will set yourself up and you will be clear about what your identity is. And that is so important, because too many businesses, and it's through their leaders, are suffering from an identity crisis.
I'll give an example, right, on that point, just while I run it. I had an agent I spoke to and everything seemed good, you know, quite a good performer, happy to be pushing and growing, and thinks that they can do 100 grand a year easily, probably 175. And I said, yeah, great. And one of our brand standards that every client, sale and purchase, gets a dedicated WhatsApp group. And he's like, no chance. They'll be messaging me all the time. And I'm like, that's a brand standard. And he didn't want to do that. And I was like, okay, cool. No sweat. Moving on. But he had it completely wrong, because I said to him, look, they won't be messaging you all the time if you message them first and get ahead of the curve, manage their informational needs better. Clients only message agents at silly times of day because you haven't probably got back to them, or there's been some news that hasn't been passed on. So the issue wasn't the WhatsApp group. The issue was how you operate as an estate agent. And the minute he was like, oh, no chance, they'll be messaging me at silly o'clock at night, I knew straight away that he's the kind of guy that probably wasn't managing expectations well enough. We've just started rolling out tenant WhatsApp groups, and that's crazy to think. But like, why shouldn't a tenant be able to take a picture of their problem and drop it in a WhatsApp group and say, I've got this tap that's leaking, like for convenience and ease? So yeah, know who you serve and don't be shy about it, but be proud of it, because that's what gives us the huge net promoter score, the huge levels of recommendation. People are amazed how much revenue we can do with very little marketing budget, because it's all in the client first experience.
Perry, I'm conscious of time because we've got till 4:22, very specific on our timing today. So we've got 12 minutes. There is one key thing that I want to touch on, because some real golden nuggets in here that we're covering. But there's one thing I also want to touch on, because I was trying to work out the other day, when you think about the reward and remuneration around the employed versus the self-employed, I was trying to work out the other day that over the years, how many different iterations of that model have we had? And I hate to think we must be up to, 2-3 dozen different versions of it. And I would say it's only probably in the last 18 months that have we got it singing and really understood, if you've got employed, what is a base salary? What do you get for the base salary? And what's the expectations? at what point does commissions kick in, and are the trigger points around commissions, and how does it work with the self-employed? And that's all great, but I think most people start in the wrong place when they talk about, well, what can we pay? Because they automatically default to, right, what do we need to pay in terms of reward and remuneration, where actually the starting point should be a more fundamental question around understanding where do you want to be on your gross profit contribution to the business? What are your direct costs of sale? And only when you understand your direct costs of sale, and this is where you and I had loads of conversations, because it was like, no, Royce, my people cost is in the overhead. No, your salespeople are a direct cost of sale. Is photography in the direct cost of sale? Commission should be in the direct cost of sale. And you've got to understand that for a business to ultimately be able to make profit, which it needs to be able to do to be able to feed the machine, then your gross profit line, you need to be making 50 to 70% GP. And I know there's probably 1 in 10 estate agency businesses who really understand their gross profit line, and sat above that is what's their fees that they're charging, what's their direct cost of sale, and therefore when you understand your fees and what you're charging and your direct cost of sale, what's the GP that you're generating? And only when you understand that can you then have a meaningful conversation about where you can be with your reward and remuneration packages. And I know we've only got 12 minutes today, but I just wanted to get this out there because this is what we're going to go deep into on Thursday, the 22nd of May, when we're in Gatwick. We're going to go through and show you exactly, we've spent 3 years perfecting this. Now, you've got a choice. You can either battle with this whole journey of employed versus self-employed and blended and go down the pathway Parry and I went down and do all the trial and error yourselves, or you can come and tap into the toolkit that we've created and walk away with the mindset, the skill set, and the tool set about how to do it. This growth dilemma is not something that we've cracked overnight, but we have finally, thank God, managed to crack the code of what the secret success formula is behind it. And for me, it's absolutely the blended. Don't get hung up on the employed versus self-employed. It's not the tyranny of the or, it's the genius of the and. But it's so important just to understand, and I know you'll put your spin on this, Perry, that understanding your cost of your sales and where you are from a pricing perspective, and are you charging the right fees and so forth, and have you got the confidence to charge the right fees related to the value that you add? Really understanding your direct cost of sale and what should be in there, and then how that informs your gross profit margin. And go away and work out, are you in that category, that band, the guardrails of 50 to 70% on your GP? And if you're not, then on the 22nd, we'll show you exactly how to get there.
And what amazes me, because I was doing it for absolutely years, is generally people pay, I don't know, 20, 25, 30 grand salaries with 10% commission of anything banked. But we all know the peaks and troughs of this industry, and 1 month they might only bank 1 sale and you've lost money on that team member because they haven't brought in enough to cover themselves, actually, and you're still paying them commission for losing your money, is how it actually works out. Because I used to do it, and people that I'd speak to in a scaling up program, they were like, oh yeah, that's how we do it. And that is completely wrong. And so it's really important to get your remuneration package right so that it's there for scale. Now, I feel really, really confident. We've got Steph interviewing, who's our head of sales, employed for more employed agents. We've got Simon got 3 video calls next week for new potential partner agents, because I've almost had to, I say condense down. We've made the most money with the least amount of agents, but now we've got the fundamentals and the foundations ready to actually start picking off the waiting list to go to phase 2 of the acclimatization period. And we're very clear with self-employed, same rules. If after 3 months you're not at this level, then it's ta-da for now. And we agree that right at the very start, whether you're self-employed or employed, because the self-employed, we're not there to serve them, we're there to help them grow. And so if they're at a level that's not looking like they're putting in the work, because we're going to put the same work in as if they were employed, we were going to have the same costs, the same premium Rightmove accounts, the same quality advice meeting generator sat in head office full time trying to get them through living rooms. If they're not converting the living rooms, they've got to go, or they need to level themselves up. They get the choice. The other really important thing with a blended model is your retention is going to be much higher, because you can move people within your model. Some people really love the brand, love what it's about. And if they're employed and they're like, oh, I'm thinking about stepping out into the world of self-employment, you're like, great, step in alongside Georgie and Simon and in that model, or someone that's self-employed that's maybe not, they've left a job, they're not enjoying it, you can put them back into your employed model. It's so important that you have a business set up to give you agility over the next 5-10 years. Who knows where the self-employed is going to go? Some people say that in this country it's going to max out at 20-25% of the industry, but people were saying that about purple bricks 5-7 years ago, that amount of people are going to be selling, but that didn't come to fruition. So you just need to make sure all options are on the table and you're not pigeonholing yourself and people are not considering joining your brand, even though they align with it and they love what you're doing. So put a waiting list on your website. That's the next big takeaway. And I'll go through on that full day at the Marriott, actually, Royston, not the Hilton, but at the Marriott, I'll go through the exact process from our initial application on our website to the kind of questionnaire they've got to fill out so we can understand their goals, to the automations behind the scenes. Really important.
And Perry, I just want to reinforce one point you talked about there, because this might be your golden nugget that you take away from today. And this is not just a state agency. I've seen this mistake made in so many different industries and businesses, that if you've got an employed person and you're paying them a base, whatever that base might be, 20, 25, 30 grand, it's irrelevant what the number is. Think about that base as nothing more than an advanced sales commission. It's not a base salary, it's advanced sales commission. And if you think about it as advanced sales commission, then what you can't do is pay commission from day one on sales that they generate. That advanced sales commission is in return for them delivering a certain level of sales that they need to deliver in order to trigger that advanced sales commission or that base salary. And the mistake that a lot of businesses, not just estate agency business make, is that they pay somebody a base salary and they pay commission from day one on any sales that they've generated. That's the definition of insanity, because your base salary is an advanced sales commission for delivering a certain level of sales in order to trigger that investment that the business is making in you. And that's part of the formula that's really important to understand about what should be the X multiplier in terms of the sales and the expectations of what they deliver for that base salary. And that is so important as the foundational building block in understanding what your commissions or your reward and remuneration package needs to be. And that's, where Perry and I, and when we did that in Jersey, the people are like, oh shit, I've fallen into that trap. And people do, they fall into it all the time. So, if you think about any base salary for employed, and you might, with a self-employed, you might help them hit the ground running by giving them a advanced sales commission in order to help bankroll them for the first 2 or 3 months. I wouldn't always recommend that, but it might be something that you do. We've tested it in the past. But certainly where you've got an employed person, change the language and your mindset and the language that you talk to them about that says, we're not going to give you a base salary. What we're going to do is we're going to give you an advanced sales commission every single month of this number. And in return for that, this is where the benchmark trigger point is, that where you start to earn commission above that figure, because that bit of sales that you generate is to cover your advanced sales commission. And honestly, that is such a golden nugget. And if you're already falling into that trap, then take that from today as a golden nugget.
And it all ties in, and we'll go really deep, but even the cultural, flexible remoteness, and even if you're not remote, I think even a lot of employed agents are feeling like they have to go self-employed to get the flexibility. So you've got a lot of great agents that are moving into self-employed when they didn't really need to, if you could just offer a bit more flexibility. And my tip there is, whether someone's employed or self-employed, I don't manage, I hate the word manage, but I don't manage the input, I manage the output. So for example, Steph is a good example, right? The minimum expectation for her is 200 grand a year, minimum bankings. She's hit that for the last 2 years in a row, because she's been, her first year was kind of building up. And I'll leave you with this, and it's really important that we had our end of quarter review last week before I went on holiday, and she's on track to do 350 grand, and all she needed to do for us to make it profitable was 200 grand. And I didn't say last year, wow, you've done 240, so now you're going to push it up to 275. The expectation stays the same. I manage the output. As long as you're doing that, I'm happy, you're happy. The more you do, the more best for you and us, because we're earning more, you're earning more. But without that pressure, if you need to do more, she's on track to do 350 plus this year, which is, I've never seen an agent do that much in my life. Personally, one agent, it's crazy.
No, it's off the scale. And your point about this is the thing that's different post-pandemic, and this is how I frame it when I talk to my clients, that there's an absolute myth that being self-employed is going to give you more flexibility and agility than being an employed model. Because if that's the case, you've got your business set up wrong and you've got the wrong culture. And the way that I think about it is this, that post-pandemic, the world of leadership and setting your business up for success today is about outcome leadership. You measure the outputs, you don't measure the inputs. You've got to create a culture where you've got a leader culture, where people are empowered, where they are self-starters, irrelevant of whether they're employed or self-employed. And the analogy I use for measure the outputs, not the inputs, is if you were walking you're walking your dog along a lake or at the end of a day, and there's a fisherman who's packing up all his tackle from the day's fishing, and you said to him, "How's your day been?" And he says, "Great." What you don't say is, he wouldn't say, "Oh, I've cast my rod 100 times today." What he would go is, "Oh, it's been a really successful day. I've caught 8 fish." And that's the difference between inputs versus outputs. The input is how many times he cast his rod. The output is how many fish he's caught. And what I'm interested in, and businesses should be interested in today, is outcome leadership and the outputs that people deliver. If Steph decides that she wants to go and play paddle tennis at lunchtime and how she manages a diary, that's completely up to her. As long as she's doing it within the brand standards and is also making sure that clients are satisfied in terms of their informational needs in a proactive way, do whatever way you want. All I'm interested in is the outcomes of what you deliver. And I think that's so important, that the fundamental to making this work is about outcome leadership, not the measuring the outputs, not the inputs. And I'm going to shut up now, Perry, because we could go on with this for hours and we're right on the money of time.
Yeah, I think we could go on all day, hence why we are going to at the Marriott at Gatwick. Do you like a little segue there? But and you know, we're going to run that day. It's going to be a great day, whether we have loads come or a good handful, we're going to add loads of value. And I think it's important for people to understand that if you're not sure, if you're thinking about launching a self-employed part to your business, if you're thinking of converting the whole thing to self-employed, if you're currently offering it, but you're losing money, like I was, because I was giving too much fee share because everyone else was paying 70%, then actually you need to come, because don't go into doing that blind. And we're going to share the partner agent agreements we've got in place, the employment contracts we've got in place, the commission claim sheets, the P&L sheets. Like, it's going to be deep, and you're going to be really equipped going into the rest of the year. Even if you solely run an employed model, you should be coming to get the correct formula on what package you should be offering your employed team. So I'll stop waffling as well, and we'll see.
So in 6 hours, basically in 6 hours, you will learn what Perry and I have been working on since 2017, with probably 50 different iterations of the model, with hours and hours and hours of deep thinking that's gone into it, with a shitload of trial and error and some rabbit holes that we've gone down. But now we've managed to create the formula. So what is a growth dilemma for a lot of people is about employed versus self-employed. For me, the world is at the blended approach. And if you want to walk away with the toolkit and exactly the step-by-step process of how to do this to fast-track your success and avoid the trial and error that we've been through, then yeah, come and hang out with Perry and I for the day on Thursday, the 22nd of May, and you will get the whole toolkit, mindset, skill set, and tool set.
And I think the difference is, I just want to finish on this. Like, I'm not shy to sharing the wins and sharing the losses. Like I've said to people, my business was on its backside when I first started talking to you, Royston. We had a real tough time because of whatever external factors, personal problems, dark places in 2022, fueled by the fact that we lost 40 odd grand in March 2022. No matter where you are now, this is coming from that's where we were, this is where we are. And with a nigh on 40 grand profit last month, with a 30% net margin, which is, I've been striving for that for years. And given that I almost gave up in 2022, to see the turnaround come to fruition with the right team members, we're all aligned. We're walking the walk, walking the talk, I guess, which is rare at the minute. You've got a lot of people that are flogging brokerage models that have gone into that model because they were not doing so well themselves, running their own brand. And I've got nothing against them, but there's no transparency around it, which really, really gripes on me.
and substance that sits behind it. And the other factor is, Perry, as well, another measure that matters is your GP 69%, which is absolutely the top range of that 50 to 70%. So, you know, you're absolutely right. We are walking the talk, and we are practitioners who are rolled up our sleeves in the trench doing this every single day. I spend my life with literally clients. 3.65 billion additional sales and revenue is our ticker of what we've put on our clients. So, you know, this is the real world stuff. So, great session. If you want to, the link is below. Limited places, Thursday, the 22nd of May. If you want to crack this growth dilemma that we've talked about today about employed, self-employed and blended, one, you'll get some great tips and ideas from what Perry and I have talked about today. But think of this as the 1/10 of the iceberg above the surface. If you want the 9/10 below the surface, then you know where you need to be on the 22nd of May.
Love it. See you all there. Take care.
Well done, Power.
Cheers, mate. See you later.
Bye.